And this is take two because I've been getting me Tim Steidtens and me Daniel Kratinski's mixed up, which I've just been pointing out. The old man is here and joined me. He's been getting his Carls and his Clives and his Nigels and his Derricks mixed up as well. So this lot should be fun. Anyway, what I want to talk about is yesterday some news was broken by the Sun newspaper. The Sun newspaper suggested that Tim Steidten had been put in his role by Daniel Kretinsky. Got that bit right. There we go. Later on, this news was poo-pooed. It was debunked. It was rubbished by Sean Whetstone, who said that Kretinsky is too busy at the moment to be bombing West Ham. He's too busy. I believe Sean's words were building his European empire. And he is busy doing that. I mean, here's a man that is investing an awful lot of money in an awful lot of things. And probably the 150 million that he invested in West Ham United is a pocket change, if we can sit here without laughing and call 150 million pocket change. To us, no. To Kretinsky, it seems to be. Sean suggested that actually Tim Steidten was put in place by the board at large. Now, when I say the board, it's fair to say the board is considerable at West Ham. So when you're talking about the board, I think you're talking about not only Kretinsky, but you're talking about David Sullivan. I don't know if Vanessa Gold, who's recently just joined the board, would have been involved in that. I guess not, but somebody would have been, certainly possibly Dan Cunningham would have been involved. Terry Brown. I believe I might have this wrong. I don't know if young Jack and, well, probably not so young anymore, but young Jack and young David Sullivan are on the board. And certainly one of Kretinsky's guys who used to work at Chase Morgan Stanley or whatever it is, who used to work for them, is also on the board. The board is considerable. It's a smorgasbord of a board, if you know what I mean. So apparently the board themselves put Steidten in place because the board were concerned. None of these two things make any sense to me, because even if Kretinsky put Steidten in place, why would he allow him to be impotent, basically, and have no say on transfers? If Steidten had been put in place by Kretinsky, then why would you still let Moyes have all the power and the power of veto? But it also goes to say, if a whole room full of people had convened a board meeting and collectively they'd decided that there was enough concern at West Ham to bring in a director of football, I would ask the same question. Why would you just still allow this same person to run the show if you do believe that there was a problem? Anyway, so that's the latest news. That's cleared nothing up at all. We've not spoken to you, well, apart from we had a little chat about Harry Maguire over on the other channel earlier. I've not spoken to you in any depth on camera this transfer window. What the hell is your take on all of this?
We're just not learning from our mistakes. In the football world, David Moyes is known as Dithering Dave. He can't make up his mind about anything, and it seems that it's now spreading across the rest of the club. Sullivan can never make up his mind about anything either. And we've got a ridiculous situation at the moment where the transfer policy, nobody seems to have direct control of it, I suppose, except Sullivan at the end, because he's the one who has to sign the checks. And as a consequence, we've signed nobody. We've had some glaring problems for several years that just aren't being resolved. In fact, they're actually getting worse. If rumours to be believed, Scamacca and Antonio both want out. We've needed a forward since Haller went, and of course we couldn't amend our system to suit Haller. But then he goes off to Ajax, scores bundles of goals for them. Then he goes to Borussia Dortmund and scores loads of goals for them. But it's obviously his fault that he didn't score goals at West Ham, not our fault. And you know, we were told 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I've got the money, I'm going to spend it on a striker. Well, since then, the only striker he spent it on was Scamacca. Scamacca has always played as a second forward, not a target man. And what do? We bring him in and we try to make him into a target man. And he's, he just doesn't play that way. He's used to playing looking at goal rather than having his back to the goal. And it just didn't work. He's now injured. He wants off. And one of the things that really worries me is that if you look at our present team, who's the star player? It's Paqueta. Paqueta in the second half of last season, I thought was doing really well. He's got abundance of skill, but he also can put his foot in. He doesn't mind a tackle. He doesn't mind making a tackle. But he's gone and hired a new agent. Well, you don't hire a new agent if you want to stay where you are, do you? You hire a new agent because you want to get off on your toes.
Well,
Um,
Skamaka also hired a new agent. Let me just get to that in just a second. So I want to get your thoughts on Skamaka. I want to get your thoughts on Bowen as well. Before we go any further, this video is sponsored by the One Football app, which you can download by clicking the link underneath this screen. Literally underneath the screen, there's a little pop-down menu. It says read more. Click on that. Go and download the One Football app. It's free, and it's an absolutely brilliant One Football app. It's much better than the Two Football app or the Free Football app. You can also use that QR code that's probably just above the old man's head at the moment. The great thing about the One Football app is that you can tailor it to be the app that you want it to be. So if all you want is the West Ham news, then at the point of downloading it, you tell the app that you are a West Ham fan. And what it'll do is it will go all around the internet searching for all those website stories about West Ham. It's got a clever algorithm. Anything with West Ham in it finds you, be it on a newspaper, be it the Evening Standard, on Sky Sports News or anything like that. And it'll bundle them up and put them all into one place and chuck it, not literally, at your phone so you don't have to go searching for it. The best thing, as I mentioned at the start, is it's a free app. Give it a try. If you don't like it, you can just uninstall it off of your phone. Okay. So, you mentioned Skamaka, actually. Before we get on to that, Skamaka, of course, is not the only striker that Moyes has got, because it looks like we'll probably be starting the season with Danny Ings up front. You've obviously forgotten about him. I know,
well,
obviously, I've given my thoughts on him as ineffective as I think he might be in our system. What are you thinking?
I've forgotten about him
There you go.
because, again, he's somebody who is effective as a fox in the box. He's not a target man, and we play football with the way we've been playing for the last 2 or 3 years with Antonio. Is we want somebody to run the channels. Ings can't run the channels. He's too slow, and he's also not strong enough with his back to goal. He wants to play with the ball in front of him, not behind him. So he's a totally unsuitable player for the Moyes system. It just doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense when we bought him. If we were going to play a single striker system, if we were going to play him as a second striker, Ings would have made incredible sense if we played him as a second striker behind Antonio, but we never did. It was always one or the other. It's just a complete and utter nonsense. The guy is being set up to fail, and I feel sorry for him. He's not doing his long-term future any good, and at his age, he hasn't got much of a long-term future either. So the best thing that could happen to Ings is either Moyes leaves the club or he leaves the club. I know which would be my preference.
What would be your? Don't be coy. What would be your preference?
Moyes has got to go. He has got to go. He will not change his system. If you go back a couple of years ago when we were doing well, he would never do well against the big six because he was so obsessed with trying to protect things that they always knew how to get round him. We'd occasionally win a game at home, but we'd never, ever win away from home against any of the big six. But now all the new managers have got the Indian sign over him. I mean, I don't think he's ever beaten Potter. I don't think he's ever beaten De Serbi in a game. I don't think he's ever beaten Eddie Howe.
I was going to say Clive. I thought Clive was coming out then again. What's the fella? Franks.
Yeah, and Brentford as well. Every time we play Brentford, we seem to get our pants pulled down. Are you still there?
I'm still there. Yeah. I'm
sorry. My screen.
I'm waiting to hear about the pants.
Yeah. So I'm really worried. And then the other thing is, when he gets a new player in, he rarely puts them in the team because he wants them to acclimatise, etc., etc. Well, we haven't got time for players to acclimatise. The season starts, what, 8 days away? It's ridiculous that we haven't bought a player.
Yeah.
We knew Rice was going. We've known Rice was going for 18 months. The only way Rice wouldn't have gone is if we'd got into the Champions League and we'd showed some ambition. We never did that. And we're not showing any ambition now because, again, we're trying to skinflint our way through things.
Do you think that's what it is? Do you think we're trying to do things on the cheap, or do you think it's? I think we've probably got money. I think it's like an inability. I think it's. I think we're just useless. I think we're bloody useless. Somebody's produced. I don't know if you ever saw them. Somebody the other day produced those emails that Sullivan sent to Sporting Lisbon for Willie Carvalho, and it's awful. That they are awful. This is not a professional document that you would expect to see from anyone. Never mind football related. It's by any metric. It is not a professional document. It's typed out. There are spelling mistakes. It's just awful. Honestly, it's like something a child.
What did you expect from the Dildo Brothers?
Well, that's what he called them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Afterwards, he found it so unprofessional. The president of Sporting Lisbon or whoever it might have been, that was the moniker that was coined off the back of that. But
yeah.
So I'm not so sure they're trying to skinflint. I think one or two things is going on. I think they're either just bloody useless. I mean, I never, as you know, I'll never insert a conspiracy before I'll insert incompetence. I always think incompetence is probably the main reason for most things. But I also think there might be something going on whereby the club know that they're bidding too much for these players that Moyes wants, so they're sort of only half backing him.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's clearly not working, and we are going to become next year's Leicester unless something happens. Because all the way through last season, it was, Leicester are too good, and Brendan Rodgers is a top class coach. Leicester won't go down. They've just been unlucky with injuries. They've just been unlucky for this reason, that reason, every other reason. James Maddison is creating goals, he's scoring goals. Well, he may have been, but he was the only one who was. And, as a consequence, Leicester, sort of 3 games from the end of the season, decided to sack him. And that was a team who'd finished 5th, 6th, and won the FA Cup in the last 3 years. We're still trading on. I mean, last season was absolutely awful. We won 11 or 12 Premiership games. And everybody kept saying, "Oh well, we were winning, doing well in the Conference League, etc." But you can only do well in these European competitions if you're in the Premiership, because if you're in the Championship and you're still in Europe somehow, you won't get the players to come and join your club. It's a one-way route to hell. So I'm really worried. And if anything, last year's anything to go by, it will just go through the same pattern again. Moyes has got 2 weeks to get a win, then he gets a win and gets another stay of execution. I mean, we had that 2 or 3 times last season. All these other clubs pick up good managers. We were being talked about getting Eddie Howe, weren't we, a few years ago?
Can you imagine?
Yeah, but Dithering Dave Sullivan wouldn't take the risk, and look at what he's done since.
I mean, would be that one thing that always annoys me, how slow we are. He's built such a fast team there. I mean, I had some fast players anyway, don't get me wrong, but I mean, yeah.
And he's being ruthless. I mean, 2 years ago, who was the standout Newcastle player? Alan St. Maximin was their standout player. He was the player everybody feared, and he's now gone because they've upgraded. They've got better players in virtually every position, and he's not standing still, and he won't stand still this season. But we're just getting. I think last year we had probably the oldest team in the Premiership,
second oldest, but and we might still be, but obviously Rice going doesn't help. Doesn't help that. The oldest were Fulham. They've re-signed Willian. who's as old as you, basically. So I think, yeah, I don't know. We're there or thereabouts. We're either the oldest or the second oldest. Yes, no,
Yeah,
no one's got any younger since last year.
yeah. And the other thing is, you look at the other managers, and they seem to be able to, improve players. We simply be making players worse. Glenn Johnson, when Glenn Johnson broke through,
You mean Clive? I think you might be Ben Johnson.
yes, sorry. Anyway, when Johnson broke through a couple of seasons ago, he looked a really promising defender. Considering he's supposedly an ex-winger, his failures tended to be the fact that he wasn't quite as good at attacking as we felt he should be, and it was like, oh well, that'll come. Well, in the last 2 years, his defending has got, progressively worse, and it doesn't make sense. At his age, it should be getting continually better in the way that Rice was getting continually better. Every year he worked at different aspects of his game, but Johnson just seemed to get more confused. And I don't know whether it was a consequence of the fact that he was being used in every position across the back line, that he didn't know whether he was coming or going. But, I can't see too many players who are actually improving at West Ham. They're just leveling out, and that's if we're lucky. I think too many of them are going downhill.
Yeah. I mean, he's got his. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot get worse. I mean, an awful lot. I think you could probably say Antonio, Cresswell, arguably Bowen as well. So there are, there are some players that work out under Moyes. I mean, the irony is, I think, because Cresswell's had his best season under Moyes, no doubt about it, and operated really well as a left centre back and on left wing. And Cresswell, Moyes been good for Cresswell, but I also think Moyes been good for Antonio as well. It's quite ironic, really, that I can understand why Souček is annoyed with Moyes. I can understand why a lot of players, Benrahma's annoyed with Moyes. Honestly, I could list a lot of players. Haller, Scamacca, loads of people that could be annoyed with David Moyes, but I wouldn't have suggested that Cresswell or Antonio would be two of them. The fact that they want out, I think, is quite telling. Anyway, listen, mate, we'll have to get you back on because I need to get these videos edited and uploaded. Thank you very much for joining us. You're looking forward to the to the start of the season. You're hopeful. You're buoyant. I can tell.
No, I'm normally incredibly optimistic about West Ham when other people generally aren't. This year, I'm really, really worried. I just think that we're wasting a massive, massive opportunity, and I think Moyes is the key component. I don't think Sullivan makes it any better. But hopefully, both of those issues might get resolved during this season.
It's a match made in hell. I don't know who's more to blame. One or the other. I do think it's a match made in hell. I think they stifle each other. Actually,
Yeah.
the two people. They, they. It's not great in terms of getting deals done. It's not great at all. Anyway, at least we've got something to look forward to. We've got Glenn Johnson coming back and joining West Ham, so that'll definitely increase the age. We'll definitely be the oldest then, no doubt about it. I mean, he's even older than William. Anyway, thanks for joining us, mate. I'll catch you a lot later.